What if ancient musical traditions, cutting-edge brain science, and like modern electronic beats could fuse into something truly revolutionary? That's exactly the kind of profound connection we're exploring today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a stack of information, pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the insights you need, giving you that shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're plunging into the world of Qalb. That's Qalb in Arabic script. It's a groundbreaking project by TATANKA, and it's described as this immersive sound experiment. It bridges ancient Persian classical music, modern sci-tech EDM, that high energy, pulsating, sometimes psychedelic stuff, and the transformative power of a 40 hertz binaural beat.
Right. And our mission, really, in this deep dive is to explore how Qalb works. Not just as music, but also as this symbolic act of cultural resistance, a kind of journey into consciousness, maybe, and a testament to the power of human creativity, but also technological creativity working together. We'll unpack the musical systems, the neuroscience, which is fascinating, the poetic heart of it, and a really compelling personal story that ties it all together. It's got this raw, vibrant energy.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. To really appreciate this, we kind of need to understand the foundation, right? The bedrock of Persian music. What exactly is the Daska system? How does this, ancient musical tradition become the blueprint for Qalb sound?
Right, the Daska system. It's the intricate modal structure at the heart of Persian classical music. And the key thing to grasp is that it goes way beyond Western scales. It's not just a set of notes. Each Daska is more like a predefined emotional and spiritual landscape. It's full of specific melodic shapes, contours, and these crucial microtonal nuances.
Microtones.
Yeah.
Those are the really small intervals, right? Between the standard notes.
Exactly. Those incredibly subtle notes, often quarter tones, that fall between the steps you hear in Western piano scales, for instance. They give the music its unique, deeply expressive quality, like 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧, that's often described as melancholic, sort of mystical. It's really foundational. Then you have 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 You also have others like Humayun, which is more somber, introspective, uses those quarter tones a lot. Sega, deeply emotional, lots of microtones. Cherga is dramatic, forceful. And there are others too, Raspanga, Nava, plus derived modes called avazis. It's this huge, rich palette. This gives Qalb a kind of preloaded emotional depth that you just don't often find in Western electronic music.
Wow. So, okay, how does Kolb take these ancient, super nuanced structures and fuse them with the digital pulse of modern sci-tech EDM? That sounds like a huge challenge.
It really is. It's a digital reimagination through and through. They use generative AI and some pretty deep audio production tools to create an entirely new sound palette. So these ancient modes get recontextualized. They're woven into the pulsing energy, the deeper layers of sci-tech and trance music. It effectively blends these two worlds, which seem so different on the surface, into something coherent and, well, new.
That's such a delicate balance. I mean, you hear a lot about cultural exchange in music, sometimes appropriation. How does Qualb navigate that? How do they keep it authentic while still experimenting? Is there that risk here?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
The sources are quite clear on this. They explicitly describe it as reclamation and elevation, not appropriation.
Reclamation and elevation. Okay.
Yeah, it's a crucial distinction. The album uses specific tonal centers keys like E Phrygian, E harmonic minor, and E Dorian. Now, these keys, they don't just mirror Persian aesthetics, that kind of sound, but they also work really well with the low-end richness of that 40 hertz sub-bass we mentioned. And critically, the AI-augmented production helps preserve those vital microtonal nuances, the ornamentation that's so essential to Persian expression, stuff that often gets completely lost when you try to force it into standard Western tuning. So the goal here seems really intentional. It's about opening up space for Iranian identity, allowing it to thrive globally through this new medium.
So it's not just about blending sounds for the sake of it. It's about amplifying a specific cultural voice, one that maybe doesn't always get heard on this kind of global stage. What stands out to you about that specific intention, this like fusion of folk memory and futurism, but with a real purpose behind it?
Well, what's really fascinating, I think, is how it uses this cutting-edge tech AI, advanced production, not to erase the past or simplify it, but actually to amplify it, to preserve its most subtle, most essential elements, the microtones, the feeling. It becomes a bridge, as the sources put it, a bridge between, quote, the symbolic sound of exile and homeland. It's creating a future for an ancient tradition in a way.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly because there's another layer here that makes this project really stand out. That's the integration of a 40 hertz binaural beat. What's the neuroscience behind this specific frequency? Why 40
Oh,
hertz?
yes, the 40 hertz. It's
No.
definitely grounded in neuroscience. That frequency is strongly associated with gamma brainwave frequencies. And gamma waves, well, they're linked to some pretty interesting things. Heightened states of consciousness, better perception, memory integration, focus, that feeling of flow.
Flow state, right, like when you're really absorbed in something.
Exactly. So the genius, perhaps, of using 40 hertz isn't just about stimulating those brainwaves directly, maybe. It's about subtly guiding the listener's mind into a state of potentially heightened focus, maybe even flow. It could transform listening from just a passive experience into something more active, almost meditative, like a hidden key unlocking deeper engagement.
But how do they weave that in? I mean, a constant beat could be distracting, couldn't it? How is it integrated without messing up the music?
It's actually quite subtle, the way they describe it. The 40 hertz binaural beat is embedded beneath the music, mixed really low. I think the sources mentioned around Manatee 32 dB.
Oh, that's quiet.
Very quiet. It's designed to influence your brainwaves almost subliminally without disrupting the musical clarity. It acts like a hidden guide, is the phrase used, sort of steering the listener towards these deeper states, whether that's introspection or maybe even ecstatic presence during the more intense tracks. And that 40 hertz sub-bass component, it's described as more felt than heard. You physically feel that vibration, which kind of anchors the more ethereal ancient melodies with this very visceral modern gravity. This whole approach makes Qalb feel like more than just an album. It's described as a sonic ritual, having therapeutic and emotional dimensions. The 40 hertz pulse is even compared to a modern-day zikr from Sufi mysticism. Exactly, a rhythmic invocation, a chant or movement used in Sufism to draw the mind closer to unity, to the divine. So the comparison suggests this 40 hertz pulse is doing something similar, affirming this idea that healing or connection can happen through harmonics, through vibration, just as much as through language or traditional therapy.
And the choice of 40 hertz, again, paired with those specific musical keys you mentioned earlier, E Phrygian, E harmonic minor, is there a connection there too?
Yeah, there seems to be a synergy. It's a deliberate design choice. The 40 hertz frequency apparently resonates well, naturally syncs, with keys like E minor, E Phrygian, E Dorian, and E harmonic minor. And these keys, they provide suitable tonal backdrops for the music's intention. E Phrygian and E harmonic minor have that characteristic Middle Eastern flavor, while E minor can bring in darker, more introspective tones. So it supports the emotional atmosphere of the original 𝗧𝗧𝗪 while also creating that pulsating hypnotic groove that's common in Sci-Tech EDM. It all works together.
This project clearly isn't just about sound and science, though. There's a deep social narrative woven in. The sources really highlight a poem, I Pity the Garden, by 𝗧𝗪𝗪 as being the lyrical heart of Qalb. Tell us about her and what this poem signifies for the project.
𝗧𝗪𝗪. Yeah, she was a hugely prominent and quite controversial Iranian poet. Her work is known for being very direct, often challenging societal norms. Her verses often serve as both a powerful cultural critique and, in many ways, a feminist elegy. And this specific poem, I Pity the Garden, it seems this powerful metaphor for the suppression, the decay maybe, within Iranian society, particularly concerning women. Silenced voices, lost potential, the suffocating constraints of patriarchy that she railed against. But it's not just despair. Within that sorrowful imagery, there's also this strong undercurrent of resistance, of awareness, and this deep yearning for renewal. It's complex.
So how does Qalb integrate such a profound and potentially heavy poem? Is it set to music in a traditional way?
No, not traditional lyrics set to a melody. It's more evocative. The album has a bonus track, apparently quite long, 52 minutes, described as a submix, and that's directly inspired by the poem. It features narration of the poem in Persian, layered with garden soundscapes, ambient textures. So it creates this sonic lament, a space to reflect on the poem's themes. But it also frames as a subtle yet powerful act of resistance in itself. By centering 𝗧𝗪𝗪's work, especially given her history and the themes she explored, the album isn't just honoring her legacy. It's actively using technology, sound, and its global reach to subvert those silences she wrote about. It gives presence, gives voice to what has often been historically repressed, particularly women's voices in Iranian art, music, and poetry.
That contrast must be really powerful. The poem's sorrowful imagery, the weight of it against the pulsating, vibrant, maybe even uplifting energy of the Sci-Tech music and the 40 hertz beat. How does that tension play out for you, the listener? Is it meant to be uncomfortable? Or is it about finding healing through that tension?
I think it absolutely creates that tension, and intentionally so. It's probably not meant to be just passively consumed as nice music.
Yeah.
It seems designed to provoke thought, to make you engage with these difficult truths, these historical weights. It allows the listener, maybe, to sit with that discomfort, that complexity, but within this dynamic sonic container, perhaps finding a different kind of catharsis or reimagined healing within the sound itself.
And this project, it isn't just abstract concepts and tech wizardry, it's deeply personal too, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about 𝗧𝗔𝗓. The sources paint her as an artist whose own story just perfectly embodies these themes of Qalb.
Yes, 𝗧𝗔𝗓. Her story is quite remarkable. She's an Iranian sculptor originally from Isfahan. Her art is described as raw, industrial, using metal maybe, full of, quote, rage and rhythm. But in Tehran, her work was apparently deemed anti-patriotic noise. Heavy criticism, which ultimately led to her exile. A familiar story for many artists, unfortunately. But then she discovered TATANKA and its project, the Orchestra Americana. And this place, located way down in Patagonia, it wasn't looking for formal credentials or acceptable art. It was looking for, as the sources say, spirit and dreams.
A sculptor finding a home in a sound project. So how did she contribute? What was her unique input into Qalb?
Well, her first contribution wasn't even sound initially. It was a kinetic sculpture, a piece that actually responded to 40 hertz pulses. It would twist and unfold, described as like a breathing machine. Some people called it a metal dervish, connecting it back at those Sufi traditions again. An act of resistance in rhythm, captured in metal. But then she started bringing sound into it. She began layering field recordings into the Sci-Tech tracks. Sounds from her life, her memories of the bustling bazaars of Isfahan, the specific sound of her grandfather's hammer, even recordings of street protests, making, as the source beautifully puts it, each sound a ghost made whole, bringing fragments of her past, of her homeland, into this new sonic space. Her journey really becomes this example of exile turned alchemy. That's the phrase used, transforming the pain and dislocation of exile into this deep frequency of belonging found within the music and the art. Her art, which was once condemned as protest, started to feel like a kind of homecoming for her within this project. And she didn't just find her own place. She became a sort of beacon, a living forge for other Iranian women artists, welcoming them apparently with steel and fire, fitting for a sculptor and telling them, crucially, you're not here to be safe, you're here to be heard.
You're here to be heard. That's powerful.
Incredibly. And her collection, titled 𝗧𝗔𝗓, which translates to the heart's ring or rust of the heart, maybe it actually sang. The sculptures themselves produced harmonic overtones at 40 hertz, and they were tuned specifically to 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗔𝗓, that deeply emotional mode we mentioned. Each piece, each sculpture, was paired with the story of a silenced Iranian woman, giving them a voice through metal, vibration, and sound.
That's just an incredibly moving story. It really shows how a project like this, fostered by TATANKA, which interestingly uses AI tools like ChatGPT, Meta.ai, Refusion.com in its processes, how it can create a genuine space for creativity, for cultural reclamation, and for profound personal and collective empowerment.
It absolutely does. It's a powerful testament, I think, to how technology, when it's guided by a clear humanistic intention, by spirit prisonning, can create these really profound spaces, spaces for healing, for expression, even for finding a sort of artistic homecoming when your physical home is lost or feels unwelcoming.
So Qalb, it really is this multidimensional, layered art project. It's deeply rooted in Persian heritage, it's amplified by neuroscience, by modern electronic sound, and it's all imbued with this profound emotional truth, carried through 𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗔𝗡's poetry and 𝗧𝗔𝗓's lived experience.
Exactly. It bridges ancient modal systems with modern Sci-Tech, uses that conscious-altering 40 hertz frequency, and crucially amplifies silenced voices through this incredible journey of artistic alchemy. And the sources leave us with this thought. Sound, when made with intention, can become both a bridge and a revolution. Qalb really demonstrates that beautifully. It shows that when art is made with that kind of deep intention, it truly can connect worlds, maybe awaken consciousness, and serve as a powerful act of resistance.
So a final thought for you listening right now. If you ever feel unheard or unwelcomed, maybe unrooted, 𝗧𝗔𝗓's story is this potent reminder. There is a frequency out there in the world that might be waiting for your unique voice, your vibration. How might you seek it? Not necessarily in silence, maybe, but in vibration, in sound, in creation. How might you let your own heart, your own Qalb, weld itself into something powerful and permanent?